Hello, I'm Estelle Matthews and welcome to Food for Thought, the show that invites thought leaders and experts from the food industry to share their insights on sustainability. Meeting the needs of today without compromising the needs of tomorrow brings its own challenges, questions and opportunities. But putting people and planet at the heart of the food industry is essential for a sustainable world and business. We'll be hearing from people from all areas of food retail and groceries who've been making strides in sustainability, leading change from the front and inspiring others to do so. Join us as we listen to a variety of stories and perspectives that are food for thought.
Consumers want sustainability, they want recyclability, but they also want low cost and they want safe products.
Preservatives like sodium or sulfites, these are extremely harmful if not being disposed in a certain way and then ultimately lead to the clash with sustainability issues.
It's all about a balancing act from a sustainability and food safety standpoint.
Production, processing and distribution of what we eat and drink has a huge impact on the environment. And retailers are rightly responding to consumer demands to advance and improve their sustainability practices. But what does this mean for safety and human health? Do greener practices naturally equate to a healthier product? Or can there be unintended consequences that end up doing more harm? Well, I'm Estelle Matthews and today I'm joined by NSF's Shipra Pareek and Leanne Blommaert to discuss how retailers can balance sustainability with keeping our food and drink safe. Now, let's start by hearing from our guest, Shipra. Perhaps you could just kick things off and tell us about your background and what led you to doing the work that you do today.
Thank you so much, Estelle. My name is Shipra Pareek and it's been 15 years working in food industry. I started my journey back in 2007 as a food technologist. I worked in milk industries, then in spice production industries, and majorly my experience comes from the retail food safety auditing. I joined NSF back in 2015, and since then it's a beautiful journey that I have and been learning so much about retail with every client that we work with.
And Shipra, you are based in Vancouver, but you're originally from India, and so you have a really broad-ranging understanding, especially from an Asia-Pacific point of view. Interesting that you've got that global view, and that's obviously helped you in the work that you do.
Absolutely. I think that's something that I really value because, I've been traveling with NSF for so many clients in Asia Pacific, in so many different countries, and it kind of opens your mind to so many new things, which you think like sometimes being sitting in one location, you think that this is the world, this is all what we have, and this is what I understand. But then as you move out of your country, your comfort zone, you start learning so many things. And being in Canada, there are so many new things that I've learned in the last 2.5 years being here.
Great. Let's hear from Leanne then. Do you have a kind of very global view in what you do? Tell us a bit about your background.
I have a very varied background. So I've been in the manufacturing side of the business for over 25 years. I've done everything from wet sauces, salad dressings, meat and poultry, primary and further processing. I spent a considerable amount of my time doing frozen food products, as well as some thermal and some aseptic. So really touched all aspects of the industry throughout my career. And then since 2020, when I joined NSF, is I manage the R&D team. So we do food research and development for our clients, helping people develop the foods, do it safely. And then we support a lot of the activities that surround food safety. And when I say that, I mean things like shelf life studies and cooking instruction development validation, microbiological challenge studies. So we do the development of the food product and then we help people keep it on the shelves safely.
Thank you. That's a great introduction. And a lot of what you're focusing on is obviously safety, but we're in this podcast trying to look at that balancing act between safety and sustainability. So let's kick straight off with you, Leanne, and just talk about, traditional practices such as extensive packaging and preservatives that sometimes clash with sustainability goals. What's your thought on that? And do you have any case studies you can bring to life to kind of explain the situation?
Yeah, sure. Excessive packaging, the use of preservatives is a hot topic and has been for a number of years now, especially as we globally start looking towards more sustainable practices. Interestingly, my experience with both packaging and with preservatives, a lot of people are looking towards what we classify as green preservatives. And meaning green preservatives are natural preservatives. They're seen as more sustainable. They're seen as more planet friendly and more health friendly. There's really a trade-off when we start talking about the use of traditional preservatives that are maybe more chemically based and these natural preservatives. One of the trade-offs being cost. The price of groceries are going up. The price of food stuff is going up in general, and this is happening globally. And when we're taking what I refer to as cheap and cheerful, call them artificial preservatives, if you will, or I just refer to them as preservatives, they're pretty cost effective, I guess is the right word for it, where a lot of these natural preservatives are very, very expensive. They're effective. They certainly work similarly to the other preservatives, but they drive the cost of products up significantly. In some cases, they're 2 to 3 times more expensive than a traditional preservative. So we're seeing, a balancing act with that. There's a demand for green, sustainable, better for you. We have to actually, take a look at the cost of goods sold and make sure that it makes sense specifically for that product.
And what do we exactly mean, Leanne, by these greener preservatives? Can you give us a tangible example of one of these?
In meat products, for example, they're using a cultured celery extract or cultured food extracts. In a lot of cases, it's like a cultured dextrose or in this case, cultured celery. That culturing process, the development of those actually takes a little bit more time. There's some fermentation and culturing that happens. So obviously the price is going to be considerably more than if you were using something that's just a simple preservative, sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate, and chemicals like that, or ingredients like that, I should say.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Shipra, can you jump in here and just give us your view on preservatives first of all, and then let's move on to packaging. So you can obviously resonate with what we're hearing from Leanne. And can you give us any examples of where preservatives are moving things forward in a safer way or otherwise?
Yeah, of course. I think I totally agree what Leanne said, and also about the excessive use of preservatives and also packaging. Now, first, because Leanne just mentioned about preservatives, I mean, the use, how much preservative is required to make a product shelf stable is something that is very important. And sometimes the use and excessive use in food industry becomes a problem, and that clashes with sustainability aims. And where ultimately these preservatives go, they end up in landfills or in the oceans, ultimately, harming the environment. So that is one important point. Preservatives in food such as nitrates that are used in meat industry just to make them look fresh. Also preservatives like sodium or sulfites. These are extremely harmful if not being disposed in a certain way, and then ultimately lead to the clash with sustainability issues.
I went into my local supermarket this morning and a joyous view of avocados for the first time in my local supermarket, where they're actually in little paper carriers, if you like, and that's one move, but it's such a small drop in the ocean where the rest of the supermarket is just covered. Most of the fruit and veg in big supermarkets are covered in plastic. How close are we getting, Leanne, to things moving on from that? And are you seeing on a global scale a big change in the way we are packaging our food?
I think we've made some strides. We are still, certainly there's a lot of excess packaging for all of our food products. It may not always be necessary and we've really moved to lightweighting packaging. So if you think 10 years ago, I mean, even think of a plastic water bottle, they used to be almost bulletproof. And now if you squeeze them a little bit too hard while you're trying to get that cap off, you've got water all over you.
That's so true.
So we've made some strides in lightweighting the packaging. What we have to remember, though, is some of this plastic packaging is actually serving a role in the preservation of the food, which is what Shipra kind of alluded to and mentioned previously. So I think of something like a cucumber, for example, and a cucumber oftentimes is wrapped with a plastic wrap. And there's a reason for that. It stops it basically stops moisture loss. So it's holding the moisture into that cucumber. It's not getting soft and soggy, and it retains kind of that desirable exterior experience, or the way people want it to look, I guess, is what we should call it. So when products look good, people are more likely to buy them. But do we need it? Probably not. We probably don't need it, but it is playing a role in extending. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. So if we didn't have that plastic wrap on and I'm picking on cucumbers, but if we didn't have the plastic wrap on the cucumber, we're going to see it get soft. We're going to see it get moldy, perhaps develop spots, which means nobody's going to buy it and it's going to end up in landfill. We flip that over with putting plastic on it, which is not a sustainable practice at all, but it lasts longer. So the role of packaging is really important for the finished food product. And I mentioned we do a lot of shelf life studies, and it is a critical component in the shelf life of your product. So it's got to be that fine balance, I think, between using the packaging, using it smartly, and the least amount that we possibly can use, and balance that with keeping product out of landfill because it spoils quickly.
Okay, so if you took plastic off cucumbers, you're potentially creating either a food safety problem or a shelf life issue. But what about success stories then? On the flip side, Leanne, have you seen a challenge overcome and therefore we've moved on?
The one that comes to mind for me is the rotisserie chickens that are sold in the grocery stores. They used to come in a black plastic tray with a clear dome over top of it. And what companies have been doing recently is they're putting them into a plastic bag with a paper tray in the bottom. And it's actually keeping them warm, and it's completely recyclable, which is a really, really good success story. I've bought them. I don't have any issues with it. In fact, the paper carrying handles that they used to put on those plastic domed ones failed more often than the plastic bag ever did. So I would definitely call those rotisserie chicken packaging, I would call that a success story for sustainability.
And how supported do you think food retailers are? Because obviously their mission really is to ensure the safe and sustainable supply of goods while balancing and supporting the ethically responsible practices. What emphasis is on the food retailers and how are they supported?
There's a lot of consumer pressure. And that's the first thing that I will say. Consumers want sustainability. They want recyclability, but they also want low cost and they want safe products. So what the average consumer doesn't understand is that it's really a trade-off. So the consumer wants sustainable. The grocery stores and the retailers want to provide it, but it's not always easy. It's not always cost effective. And when we pass that cost on to the end consumer, they're not always happy. So I think it's all about a balancing act from a sustainability and food safety standpoint.
And Shipra, is there anything you feel food retailers need to give them that extra support to ensure this safety balanced with sustainability?
Food retailers do a lot of things. They have so many strategies that aim towards, social responsibility as well as sustainability and food safety. One such things are giving a push and procuring food items from suppliers that follow sustainability. So indirectly, you are actually contributing to making the world more sustainable because you are indirectly pushing them to follow those sustainability practices. Another one is that minimizing waste. So if they minimize waste, there is a very effective inventory management that these retailers follow so that there is less waste that is going out. And also, if there is waste, it could be donated or recycled or upcycled. So that kind of things that they can definitely opt for. Another one is opting for these animal welfare programs. NSF do this with so many different clients all over the world, where you see in the supermarkets these free run eggs, or grass fed livestock, or cage free eggs, initiatives like these. And also retailers opt for services like one of which NSF offers, which is sustainability scan. So they have a goal for sustainability. NSF helps them in this sustainability scan thing, where we have experts, we have tools to calculate and to understand their carbon footprint, and then accordingly help them reaching to their sustainability goals.
That's so fascinating. But do you think also there should be an emphasis on grocery stores, and they should be focusing on integrating sustainable practices into their food safety protocols?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, there should be the more emphasis for the grocery stores. It's been not in the speed as it should be, but there is a lot of emphasis which is going on in the grocery stores, in the markets, about the sustainability practices, trainings, a lot of things like reusable bags, effective use of energy, all these things. Yeah.
Let's move on to refrigeration, the chilly stuff. So, Leanne, I expect you've got a lot to say on this. Chilling and freezing isn't simply about turning down the temperature, is it? Can you just kind of talk us through the process and what's involved, and actually move on to tell us about how retailers marry sustainability and energy use within this sector?
Sure. Any refrigeration and freezing is a complex business when it comes to food products. And you're right, it's not as simple as turn up or turn down. There is an impact on the food product itself. When we change even a degree or two in a refrigerator or a freezer, it definitely has an impact. An example of that would be ice cream. If you store it a little bit warmer, you can get the formation of ice crystals, which again, to an end consumer, is not something that's desirable. When we talk about produce, turning it up a degree or two can really impact the overall shelf life. You might see some mold growth on the produce, decreasing its shelf life. The flip side with produce, because in a refrigerated environment, produce is so susceptible to temperature. A degree cooler and, your lettuce freezes. And we've all seen that, at the back of the fridge when something falls back there that shouldn't be, and it's a mess. And that's literally just a couple of degrees of difference. Retailers have certainly been making strides towards more sustainable practices in retail. If you think about years ago when you used to walk into the frozen food section, you needed to have a jacket or a sweater. Everything was open and that aisle was absolutely freezing cold. So we were just over refrigerating or over freezing. It was all just going up into the environment. So we've seen the use of refrigerated cases now that have doors, or at the very least, they've got curtains on them. I would say probably 95% of places have moved to doors. So that's actually helping to keep the cold where the cold should be. A little bit nicer shopping experience for those of us while we're there, but definitely a lot more sustainable. It's helping them, save cost in terms of energy, and it's also helping, with the overall refrigeration, product quality, product safety. And we've also seen in recent years the move towards CO2 as a refrigerant to replace things like Freon and all those other refrigerants, and there have been a lot through the years. So the use of the CO2, which is a lot more natural and a little bit more environmentally friendly. So stores are still in the process of converting to CO2. It's not just as simple as put in a new rack and that new rack is a CO2 rack. The entire store has to be changed over at the same time. But as stores are renovating, you're actually seeing a lot of them that are moving towards more sustainable refrigeration practices.
So we're really talking energy efficiency. So let's ask Shipra, are there other alternatives to freezing? What else can we do to be more energy efficient? How can retailers marry the sustainability and energy use with food safety and regulations in this area?
I think that's a very important and an interesting thing. In fact, yesterday I was reading some information about this new technologies that are coming in. This technology finds the issues in a particular machine, like in a refrigeration system, if the temperatures are fluctuating, and then it self adjusts itself. So there, if there are any fluctuations and the product has a danger of going outside the temperature danger zone, it automatically fixes it. Also, it tells way ahead in advance, like if there is a maintenance that is needed for a machine, it tells you before that. So your products are safe and a preventive maintenance schedule is followed. So I think things like this, these automations, these new technologies that are coming in, these are absolutely fantastic. There is another one which is like variable compressor speeds that are there. And in fact, I've seen refrigerators nowadays that comes with this energy efficiency and variable speed compressors, right? So what they do is that, it is like, it will give you the energy as much as it's required. So it is not giving you more energy. The compressor will adjust its speed on the basis of what temperature is needed. So once your food is at a certain temperature, it'll start decreasing its requirement, and the flow will decrease. So the energy requirement will decrease. So these kind of new things that are coming in, they are absolutely great, and I think very much helpful in sustainability drive.
Well, hopefully moving in the right direction. Earlier, we spoke about single-use plastics to a certain extent, but let's talk now about glass and reusable packaging. We really are in a space now where lots of people are saying glass is better, and we should be going back to old-fashioned ways, things like having milk bottles outside delivered to our door, in recyclable glass bottles. That's something that even last week when I was staying in London, I noticed that a lot of people are now going back to that practice. Is this a good thing to do? Is it safe? Is it? Do you think we'll see a return to this kind of thing? Let's ask you first, Shipra.
I think this particular question takes me to my good old days when we actually had those glass bottles delivered to our home, and we just take the milk and return the bottles, and then they come again, still clean, washed, and then they refill it.
Was it ever a safe practice though, Shipra, do you think?
So yes, it was a safe practice. To be honest, there was this thing that been followed for years and without any complaints that I am aware of as such. So I think it was a good practice, provided that the system is robust in its nature. It has everything that is required in terms of cleaning, washing, sanitizing, redistribution, packaging, all these things together. So as far as we have all these things in place, this system works well. And in fact, there are so many meetings that I've been to, and I spoke to so many people, and an industry is thinking to revisiting this particular idea of bringing this again of glass bottles.
And have you noticed that in North America and elsewhere in your research, Leanne? Do you think glass is a good way forward, and any other form of reusable packaging?
Glass has always been considered infinitely recyclable, right? You can reuse those containers or bottles until they're not safe to use, i.e. they've chipped or broken. Again, I guess I'm sounding a bit like a broken record. Everything is a trade-off. I was reading and took a look at a statistic, and this one kind of resonated with me. And they said it takes 26 truckloads of unfilled glass jars equals 1 truckload of unfilled plastic pouches. So there's it's a huge impact from a carbon footprint standpoint. But then we trade off with that infinite recyclability versus sending that plastic packaging to landfill. So I think we're probably going to be looking towards glass a little bit more. The downside with glass is it's fragile, it breaks. So there's a little bit of a food safety risk but probably less so from a product standpoint and more from, we're going to bang it and there's going to be a small crack or a chip, maybe a little particle of glass gets into our yogurt or into our milk. If we're going to go towards glass packaging, we have to make sure that it's robust. We have to make sure that it's thick enough that it's going to withstand, being put into a grocery bag, especially if it's going to be part of your weekly shopping. And we have to think of the impact on consumers like senior citizens. Glass is heavy compared to plastic. So I think there's merit to it, but I think it's going to take us a little bit of time to get back to that.
And I suppose getting consumers into the new habit of using glass in the right way, that's going to be a bit of a step change when it's such a throwaway culture.
It is. And I think, introducing, recycling incentives, like you're going to have a deposit on your glass and that will encourage people to bring it back as well. And that's something that we have not been good at doing in the past. In Canada, or in Ontario, I should say, in certain provinces, you can bring back pop cans and get a refund, a deposit refund. In Ontario, we've just rejected that again as an option. So what happens? We throw them on the side of the road, we recycle them, or we just toss them in a garbage can, whatever is the most convenient in that moment. So you're right, Estelle, with that throwaway culture. So I think there's some incentives that we certainly could look towards to be a little bit more of a circular economy.
I think I could get obsessed with getting money back on stuff like that. I'd have a collection of bottles that will be hanging around in my car maybe for a while. But yes, it is about education, isn't it? And another side of educating consumers is when it comes to things like reusable bags, that it may well be the same worldwide, that people are now being persuaded to use bags for life. But actually, are these thicker plastic bags good for you, good for our groceries, and are we keeping them clean enough? What are your thoughts, Shipra?
Yeah, I think so. There is no yes and no for this one. Because it majorly depends on how you are handling that bag. Are you cleaning it? Are you sanitizing it? You're using it for different purposes, like you're using a different bag for a raw meat than for ready-to-eat products. All these points are extremely important when we talk about these, thick plastic bags. Fabric bags are great. So you just take the bag, you wash it if it is dirty, and then you use it again. But with these, multi-time use thick plastic bags, it is extremely important that the proper washing is done, because if they are not being washed properly and stored in the right spaces, they can lead to bacterial contamination like E. coli or salmonella growing inside the bag. It could be a yeast or mold that is growing in the bag if it is not stored in the right areas, or if it is not washed, sanitized properly.
Thank you. And Leanne, are Bags for Life making an impact? Is it hitting the spot?
Not really, in my opinion, at least. I go to the grocery store, multiple times a week. And every time I'm there, I'm watching people buying new bags. And that they've got oodles of bags, either in the trunk of their car or sitting at home. And you know what? Guilty. I've forgotten my reusable bags before and had to make do either buying new ones or, just carrying stuff out in my hands. So I think we're not 100% of the way there yet. It's not new, but I think it's still a practice that people aren't necessarily familiar with. I've seen a lot of places that are actually taking donations of reusable bags now, because some people, especially if they're doing grocery delivery, they're loading all those groceries into reusable bags, and people are ending up with boxes and boxes of them. So there has been a call, to reuse them, to donate them so that they can upcycle them, recycle them, or at least give them to people who need them, so that they don't have to buy them.
So rather than educating consumers, it's almost incentivizing them. Does the price need to go up for these Bag for Life, or what needs to happen?
Yeah, I was just saying that I can brag about this because I keep and carry the bag all the time in my car. I never go in the supermarkets without my bags. I have so many bags, and when somebody's accompanying me there, they were like, "You're so petty. You're bringing everything with you. Why you need so many bags for it?" And I was like, "It's not about not buying a bag. It's about contributing to the environment. It's important. Why do I don't need it. So why should I buy it from here? So yes, I think it is important. But what is also important is to encourage the customers to get into these practices, to encourage them some sort of motivation, maybe kind of an incentive, maybe a small discount when you are, nowadays all the supermarkets have these cards, they are membership cards. Why not there is a small discount or the additional numbers added to your reward points that can help you buying something free next time. So, rewards like that definitely would help if introduced by supermarkets and encouraging people to, get their own bags.
Sounds like a very good plan. It would definitely incentivize me, I think. And let's talk now about food waste. So it's about, is it 1/3 of food produced for human consumption is either lost or wasted? Let's ask you, Leanne, food waste, where are we with this? And we've seen a recent decline, haven't we, in the use of sell and use by date. So food retailers are attempting to reduce the amount of food going to landfill, but is it enough? And is this a safe approach?
So I've got two thoughts on that. I guess the first thing that I'll mention is, at the end of September, the state of California passed Assembly Bill 660. So they call it Bill 660 or AB 660, which actually prohibits the use of sell-by dates in all retail stores. So what they're doing is they're moving to a model that has a best if used by date or a use by date. So best if used by talks about peak freshness of a product. So, your bread is going to be best if used by this date. A use by date is communicating product safety. So that would be something that would be on supplements or you would see it on meal replacements and things like that. So there's a safety date associated with that. And maybe a decrease in vitamins, minerals, or some label claim. So I think it's great. I think it's going to put the onus of responsibility on consumers. And that's what worries me a little bit. And I can just share, my own personal story. So I have started, when I open up a jar of something, I take a black magic marker and I write the date I opened it up. It doesn't matter, what the best before date is, but I'll go back and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to use this jar of, mustard. I just opened it up, a month ago, and I look at it and it was 9 or 10 months ago. We have really short memories, and I'm a little bit concerned about these best if used by date. It's peak freshness. It's not a safety date, but, those products aren't going to last forever. So consumers, I think there's some consumer education that's going to need to happen that's associated with that. It's going to be a judgment call. Consumers are going to need to look at it, smell it, taste it, look for visual signs of spoilage like mold. You can't always see those visual signs of spoilage. So I'm a little bit concerned from that standpoint, but I think it's a step in the right direction. I've also seen a really big movement, and I call it the ugly fruit and vegetable movement. So what we've seen is some of those products that aren't pretty enough to be sold as firsts in the store are actually being utilized and sold as ugly fruits, ugly vegetables. So for example, if you're going to make a pot of, mushroom soup, and you can buy a huge, container of mushrooms, but they have open veils. It doesn't look the prettiest, but if you're chopping them up and putting them into a product, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. So I think the consumer perception needs to shift a little bit as well. Our apples don't need to be perfect. If they have a small blemish on them, they're still edible. But, we eat with our eyes first, and we all want that perfect, glossy, shiny piece of fruit or, the perfect vegetable because it's more visually appealing to us. So I think we need to just kind of shift that little bit of a perception, realize that, some of these, if a peach is a little bit misshapen, it's still okay to eat. It still tastes the same. It still has the same nutritional value. So we're seeing some of that shift as a less than perfect, perfectly imperfect is another phrase that people are using for these. So nothing wrong with them. But we just need to maybe change the way we look at things a little bit.
I like the idea of the change in the sell-by date, or what did you describe that as, Leanne, again? Just so that's an ideal date, is it? As a
best if used by.
A best if used. So and in practice, have you seen any situation where that's not gone right? I mean, you hinted towards, I would say it's especially the elderly population might go, well, I'm not wasting this, and therefore it hasn't told me I need to stop using it. But is it actually safe for people to carry on using?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and this just passed, and it's not going into practice for another 6 or 8 months. So I think we're going to see what happens as we move forward with it. Especially not only elderly people, but people who live alone. You buy a great big jar of mayonnaise because it's a better price than the little jar. And then how long does it take you to go through it? And if there's no more of those best before dates on it, and important to note that a best before date never communicated safety. A best before date always was meant to say, this is when the product maintains kind of its integrity. So after this, you can still eat it. It's still safe to eat. But as always, when there's mold growth or when you see something not right, if you're getting separation, an oil separation on top, you probably shouldn't, unless it's natural peanut butter, you probably shouldn't stir it back in. If your mayonnaise is separating, you probably want to throw it out. But I don't think we've done a really good job of educating people on kind of what a spoiled product, looks like, or the signs to look for in spoiled products. So I think it's risky.
So, Shipra, do you think retailers rely on consumers to use their common sense, or what Leanne is describing is possibly the best methodology, making sure there is a use-by date?
I think relying completely on the consumer's knowledge could be a bit risky because not everybody is on the same literacy level that we think. Now, to make them more educated about it, I think what could be better than social media? Small clippings, more awareness information, something written, maybe a small, kind of an camp that can be there in the supermarket itself, where they are making people aware about how that product can be used and for how long you can use it. But solely depending upon the common sense of a buyer, I don't think it is a great idea. I'm sure a little bit more education would help everyone, but then again, it is individual's decision if they want to use it or not, but then letting them know that this is safe even if you use it like after 1, 2, 3 days, it is good. So yeah, I'll stick to the education part, making them more aware about it, because it's a very gray area if we look at it. It could be like your product is open, it is shelf stable, there is yeast or mold grows because of the damp conditions and high humidity. You are keeping it outside a condition which is not favorable, and then you will say that, oh, you said it is good to use. Now what happened? So now this is very, very concern, and maybe a little bit education can definitely help.
So that segues on nicely to our final question about food safety and environmentally friendly practices. What about training? Where does training come into this? Let's ask you, Leanne. How do retailers balance training so that they maintain cleanliness without excessive use of harsh chemicals, for example?
So training, I think, is the root of everything. So the more educated we are, the more educated the people working in the stores are, the better we all do in the end. So making sure, if you have a sanitation team that is not properly trained and doesn't know how to use cleaning chemicals, for example, that in itself is a risk. I mean, and as my dad used to say, a lick and a promise with a cloth isn't really making it clean. And you know what? That stuck in my head for all of these years. So, balancing the need to be productive with the need for education is really, really critical. I was talking to a sanitation company just a couple of weeks ago at a trade show and was asking them about some of the environmentally friendly, cleaning chemicals that are being used in manufacturing and in retail. And he was saying what people don't realize is that in a lot of instances, the contact time needs to be longer for these green chemicals or the environmentally friendly chemicals. They work, but they just need a little bit more time. So if you've introduced new cleaning products without introducing the proper training, then you could be doing yourself a huge disservice from a consumer safety and a product safety standpoint.
So your final thoughts, please, Shipra.
Yeah, I agree to what Leanne said. And also, if we talk about cleaning chemicals, a proper training on cleaning chemicals is extremely important, because that also contributes somewhere to the sustainability part. When you're following a green cleaning protocol, that means you are using less water, you are using, wipes that are environmental friendly, reusable wipes basically. So ultimately, your contribution to sustainability in that sense. These chemicals should be like eco-friendly. It should not harm to the environment, but at the same time, use of water is extremely important. Proper training of how to use and the dilution practice is important. That you are not using excessive chemical which is not even needed, and you are like more enthusiastic and trying to clean something which is not really required at that point in time.
Well, we've covered so much in a very short space of time on this podcast, but it's clear that managing food safety and sustainability is a challenging balancing act for food retailers, isn't it? The aim really, as I'm hearing it, is to find sustainable methods to reduce the use of resources and waste generation. And this is going to help lower the risk of food safety issues and reduce the likelihood of contamination in both materials and any of the health risks involved. So we've heard about consumer pressure, the responsibility of retailers to educate, and a shift in perception that's probably needed by everyone involved in food production. Thank you both very much. There's plenty more to say on this, but I'm sure it'll bring up plenty of questions going forward for our listeners. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The speaker views are their own and may not necessarily reflect the views of NSF or any of its affiliates.